Hey guys, what's going on? And welcome to my channel. I'm Leo and I'm a game developer, and this channel is going to be focusing on a lot of aspects of game design, but definitely a lot of game art. So I hope you guys like game art, and it's actually my first time making a YouTube channel, so I'm not very good at this. This is my first time recording, so I hope I have a lot of the settings right. This is my first time using OBS too. So I hope everything works out, but definitely there could be something wrong with my mic. I hope it's not too loud or too quiet, but if there's anything wrong that you guys notice, just let me know in the comment section down below, and I'll try to fix it for the next video. But I plan on posting a lot, so subscribe, stay tuned for more, because it's going to be a constant stream of videos as I continue to work on my new game. And I'm going to be trying to document a lot of the progress I make, and anything cool I make I'll try to record and post. And the style of these videos is going to be more like a live stream, and I could do some of those too if you guys wanted me to in the future. But for sure, if there are any tutorials you want me to make to cover any specific areas you have questions on, I could also do that as well. So just let me know what you want to see. But for now, a lot of these videos are going to be more just like streams of just me recording the work that I do every day for my game. And so, yeah. So I am an indie developer. I'm working on a new game of my own by myself. And I'm going to need a lot of high quality environment pieces for my game in 3D. Um, so I'm going to start working on those, and my game is actually taking place on a spaceship. So one thing I do need quickly for my game is this tiling floor material. So it's going to be a pretty cool sci-fi interlocking tiled floor thing that I'm going to make in Substance Designer. So that's what I'll be doing today. So I'm going to load up Substance Designer, and what I usually do is I make the height map and the normal and ambient occlusion in Substance Designer. And then I take it into Substance Painter to texture, because I like more of the node based workflow in Designer for creating the actually hard, like hard surface modeling. And because Designer is sort of like a modeling software in a way, where you like chip away at like the rounded cube or the plane or whatever, and just make some cool intricate details. And then I like the more artistic paintbrush workflow of Painter for actually making all the small details and adding like decals and things like that. So in the top left corner, I'm going to add a new substance, and I'll call it 4x4 sci-fi interlocking tile floor, I guess. And the reason it's 4x4 is because I'm going to be making a lot of modular pieces for my game, and the height of a player in my game is 2 units. So sort of every main wall piece and floor piece will be 4x4, so about twice the size of the player. So it's always important to have scale in mind when you're working on something new like this. Okay, so I start with the base material and just right click, drag it into the cube, so that now we can preview the material that we're making. So cool. And we're in the metal roughness PBR workflow, and the material preset I will change to maybe like aluminum, or actually let's do like titanium. I feel like that's like spaceship-esque. So cool. And then we don't really need to touch much else. We'll just go to the user defined maps, and for now I'll turn on height, normal, and ambient occlusion, because that's the ones that we're going to generate through Designer. So cool. And I'll create a shape, and I'm going to scale it down to 0.5. And I'm going to drag that output into height, ambient occlusion, and normal. Okay, so now in the normal, I'm going to click on this wire here and type in normal. And in the ambient occlusion, I'll click on that wire and type in HBAO. So now we've set up our normal and ambient occlusion. But I sometimes find that the standard HBAO node is too strong, so I'm going to change the height depth to 0.01 instead of 0.1. Alright, cool. So I'm going to save this in just documents for now. I feel like I need to organize a little better for sure. But okay, in FPS game assets. Okay, actually just in documents. Okay, cool. So I'm going to blend this shape with more shapes to create the cool intricate tile that we want. So I'll grab a polygon, and I sort of have an idea of what I'm doing here, but I know you guys probably can't really understand what I'm doing completely. But what I want to do is, this is one tile, and I know the final floor will have 4 tiles, and I want them to sort of interlock together. So we're going to have to make some sort of like interlocking mechanism. So I'm going to rotate this 90 degrees, drop it in the foreground of the blend, change the blending mode to add, and then I'll scale this while holding Alt. And I don't want it to tile, so in tiling mode I'll go absolute, no tiling, and I'll drag it up on the X until it starts popping out up here. Alright, cool. So maybe like 0.35. And then I might scale it out this way. That's too much. Okay. Alright, cool. And now we need to subtract one of those as well from the other side, so that this piece has something to fit into, like sort of like a puzzle piece, I guess. So I'm going to transform this again, drop that into the foreground, and set the blending mode to subtract. Rotate 90 and drag it on the Y. Now, I'm not sure how far I have to go, but I'll keep it there for now. Alright, so that's our main tile piece. So I'll frame it, and I'll call it tile base. So now I'm going to bevel this base tile, just give it a little bit more detail, and set the bevel to something like -0.02. And now I want 4 of these tiles to come together. So how do I do that? So we need some blend nodes and some transform nodes. I'll set this blend to add. So we want the initial transform to be -0.25, -0.25. So now we move this tile down to the bottom of our screen. And then we need 4 more transform nodes. Not a text node. Okay. So we have 4 nodes for each of the 4 tiles that we have. And now on the second transform node, I'm going to rotate by 90, which also influences the transform nodes behind it. So in the next transform node, I'll also rotate it by 90. And then finally on the last one, rotate it by 90. And now we're going to blend all four of these together. So we're going to be using this final output down at the bottom. So it doesn't matter when you add blends together which one goes in the foreground and which one goes in the background, because they'll both just add up anyways. So I'm not really worried about that. And when we add them all together, you can see this cool shape we get. So nice. I'm going to switch these over to the top. And I'll frame that. Call it final transform. All right, cool. So now that we have all these tiles lined up, you can see that now we can start to tell that maybe this transform here isn't right. So let's see which way it should go. So negative 0.48 is still not enough. All right, so negative 0.5 is perfect. Cool. All right, so that's exactly what we want. But that's still not enough, because now we need to add in the cooler, smaller details to this. All right. So what I want now is sort of like a metal bump to this in the middle of the tile. So I'll do another blend, which will be a copy, and I'll set the opacity to 0.5 for now. Okay. And I want to take this shape, but without this top bump to it. So I need to find a way to do that. So we'll need a blend down here. And I'll drag this shape in the background, our initial square shape, and then I'll drag this into the foreground and subtract. Okay, so now we have this shape, but without the initial bump there. And I'm going to drag this into the top. And it's there, but it's too big, so we'll have to transform it and scale it down a little. So I'm going to click on this so we can see what we're doing. And now we'll scale it down. And we actually don't want any tiling. Okay. So something like that should do it. But you can see that the polygon shape that works here isn't necessarily the same size that will work on this shape, because they're two different sizes. So the proportions aren't the same, which is why we get this here. So we'll need one more transform in between our original polygon and the one that we're going to use for this new shape. And I'll just drag this out and scale it a little. So that sort of fixes that problem. And I kind of just guessed here when I said 0.5 for the opacity, but now that we actually have the shape here in the copy blend, I can sort of see a little bit better what we're doing. So if we set the opacity to 0, you can't even see that that shape is there. So I just want it to be something small. So maybe like 0.25 will work there. So yeah, I think that's pretty good. And the nice thing about working in Substance Designer with the rounded cube is that you can just rotate around and see it from all different lighting angles. So that's pretty cool, especially when you're working with the roughness map and metallic map and stuff like that, but we're not doing that right now. Okay, so now we want to add in other details onto this tile, which means another blend node. And I'll set that to subtract. And I'm going to grab a new shape, which will be a capsule this time. And you can see it doesn't look much like a capsule yet. So in this pattern specific slider, we'll just drag that up. And there we go. And I want to blend this one with like a complex looking bolt that I'll make from scratch. So another shape, which will be a disc, scale it down a little bit, and bevel it by -0.0 or -0.1. And then I'll copy the shape for another blend and subtract this shape from this shape, which you can see gives us nothing. So we'll have to scale the shape down a little bit so that it looks like an inset. Alright, cool. So basically what we're doing here is this is going to be the bolt that we're making, and we're going to subtract the bolt from the capsule. So basically the light parts are going to be what we're subtracting. So I hope that makes sense. So we're going to have to make another shape in here. So I'm going to grab a polygon, which will be sort of like the bolt itself. Scale it down, bevel by like -0.1 again, and one more blend. And we'll just add that in. The polygon's a little bit too big. Alright, cool. So there's our shape. And we're going to drag that into the foreground, keep the capsule in the background, and subtract. Okay, so you can see that this bolt is not at all in the right place, so I'm going to have to transform it. Alright, that's pretty good. And I only want 2 bolts in here. And we're not getting the right placement that I really want. So what I might do is just turn off tiling and place them both by hand. So I think this would be good at like -0.55. Or no, that's not enough. -0.6. 0.7. Okay, that's what I want. So then I'll transform this again and instead say 0.7. Oh, actually I can't do that because I didn't change the size there. So I'll have to use this transform. And before we do the subtract blend, I'm going to have to add these two. And then we'll transform this. Alright, cool. So this is exactly the shape I wanted. And I'll just throw that in there. Alright, so you can see that it's sort of working, right? It's just not in the position I want at all. So I'm gonna highlight all of that, frame it, and call it capsule. Ooh, I spelled that wrong. Capsule bolts, because I don't know what else to call it. Okay. So now I'm going to put a transform node in between the final blend and the actual thing. And really scale it down to the size I want, which is pretty small. And I want to make sure the proportions are right. Okay, so something like that works. And I don't want any tiling at all. All right, cool. So I want one of these in each of the four corners. So one here, rotate it by 45 degrees. Okay. And then we'll need another transform. And I'm going to blend these two together. With the add blend mode. Can't see anything yet because they're just both overlapping each other still. So I'll rotate that by 90. And just edit the position a little bit till they look sort of in the same place. Yeah, that's not bad. And then we'll need one more blend so we can do the other side. So this will go in the background. And we'll add it with another of itself, but flipped 180 degrees. And then we'll have to adjust that. So on the X offset, we'll lift it up a little bit. 0.03 again. So now we have our details on the four corners. So I'll frame this, call it transform. Okay, cool. I'll actually keep the final transform here. Okay, so now the next thing I want is some details here. So I'll grab another shape. Okay, and we'll use the subtract blend node in order to sort of like push the details down inside. And what I want is sort of some like sort of clip, sort of make it look like these four panels are clipping together. Okay, so that's not bad for a start. So we need a transform for later. We already know that. I'm going to bevel this in the negative direction. Maybe like 0.01 because it's a pretty small shape. And then I'll blend this with another shape of the same size, but I'll just lower the scale a little bit, so like 0.03. And I'll subtract that. Okay, we might need... Oh, okay, I changed the scale of the wrong shape. this scale will be 0.03. So that gives us that nice inset there. And I'll duplicate it again. Make this shape 0.02. So it's sort of like putting squares within squares here. To make, I'm trying to make like, I guess, a handle. And then I'll add that. So while previewing this, I know I want the scale to be just a little bigger, because I want it to fill up the whole shape. Okay, that's cool. And I want it to have a sort of slope to it. So I'm going to blend it with a gradient linear, and set the blend mode to multiply. And the gradient linear isn't in the position I want, so I'll just set up a quick histogram range and lower the position. Okay. So we want the range to be all the way up. Okay, I'll lower the position to like 0.2. All right, sure, that's not bad. I'm just not sure if that's enough of a gradient. So what I'll do as well is increase the tiling. Yeah, and then I'll change the position. All right, so that's a pretty good gradient right there. Okay, cool. And then I feel like it still needs something else. So I'll grab one more shape and subtract it from that final shape. But I don't want it to be exactly centered like the others, so I'll put it in the transform first. Okay, so transform maybe like 0.005. And even before I transform it, I'll bevel it too. And this time we'll do like a positive bevel. Okay, 1 is obviously way too much. I meant to do 0.01. Still a little too big. Maybe 0.005. All right, cool. And I don't want to subtract it all the way, so I'll set the opacity to something like 0.5. Okay, cool. So I'll frame this and call this interlocking clip. Drag that up there. And it's really the transform that we want in here. So you can see the clip. That's what we just made. Okay, so now I'll transform it to where we want it to go, which is right on the ends here. It will need another transform as well, because we want 2 of them. And in order to show both of them, we'll have to add them together again. So one more add blend node. And I accidentally press subtract, I guess. Okay. So this time we'll offset it on the X, and it's pretty cool that you can see it affecting every tile, because the changes we make on this one tile will affect every single one. So, alright, cool. So we made those clips, and now the final thing I want to do is make clips that actually connect these tiles together, just to add a little more variation. So this is the last blend we'll need, not for the whole project, but just between. This is the last major blend we'll need, I guess. So now we'll have to make the final clips. And if you wanted to save time, I guess you could just use these same clips, but I want to do a different shape this time. Okay, so I want it to be like rectangular and beveled a little bit. I'll use the same shape, but just with a smaller base scale again, and subtract it. Okay, cool. Then I'll also use a bevel. Okay, copy the same shape again. Pass both of these through another blend, but this time add it. And this shape will be quite a bit smaller, so maybe like 0.28, and smaller here as well. Okay, so now it's time to be a little creative and come up with a cool design thrown here. So, okay, what I might do is, before I add this in, I might copy it with another shape. So scale it way down. I'll bevel the shape. Maybe like 0.01. And I'll also transform it so I can adjust its position. And I'm copying this, so I'll set the opacity to 0.5. And I'll just move it over here. Okay. And I want all these edges to be nice, so I'm going to bevel basically everything I make. This bevel isn't enough. I might go like 0.03. How does this look? Okay, pretty good. And we'll need one more subtract blend. And what I'm going to do is, for optimization purposes, it helps to sometimes reuse stuff you've already made. So I'm going to take this bolt, drag it in here, but obviously not with those proportions, so I'll be using a transform node. Set the mode of the blend to subtract, and obviously we're just subtracting everything at this point, but I'll scale this down, but without tiling. And I just want it to fit here. Maybe that's a little too much. So I'll set the opacity to about 0.5. All right, cool. So there's the clip in between tiles. So I'll frame it, and I'll call it tile clip. I'll drag it into our subtract blend. It's not the right size, so another transform 2D. And I think I want it to be, it's going to be on both sides that don't have the puzzle pieces, basically. So we want it there, right? And there. Okay. And I will not want tiling. Okay, so I'll set this to 1. Negative 1.25. I'm not really sure. Negative 1.35. Okay. And I'll transform that down. Negative 0.5. Blend these together with the add. Okay, negative 0.5 was too much. Want it pretty much there. So symmetrical to the other one. So that's negative 0.35. Maybe negative 0.36. Yeah, that looks good. And now one final blend. And I'll just transform this simply by rotating. Add them both together, and now we have all our clips. So it works pretty easily. I'm just wondering why that's happening right there. I think it's because we're subtracting. Yeah, so we're basically subtracting right there. So what I could do is, instead of copying these, I could subtract and add that shape back in. But I don't know which one looks better. I guess it looks better the way it already is. Yeah, okay. So I'll just keep it that way. Alright, cool. So we basically have the whole shape done. So I'll take our exports. So basically what we did is we created the tile base, and between the capsule bolts, the interlocking clip, and the tile clip, we took this small shape here and turned it into this. And then we ran it through a final transform, which just took the one shape we already made, rotated it on all 4 sides, and created our final tile base. So this is like a preview of what the height map would look like, I guess. And then we also have our normal map and our ambient occlusion. So now I'm going to right click on the base material, create output nodes. We don't need the hidden connectors. So now we have our base color, which is obviously nothing because we didn't create input for that. Our normal map, roughness, metallic, and here's the ambient occlusion and the height map. So we have all three exports we need basically to run this material into Substance Painter and finish the texturing in the next video. And I'll show you my sort of workflow for just taking these three maps, the ambient occlusion, height, and normal, and bringing this into Substance Painter and like baking it all out. Baking a new set of normals based on a high poly mesh. So I will show all that in the next video, and we can texture this and create our final texture for Unity's HDRP. So that will be in the next video, and I will see you guys all then. Thank you for watching. Make sure to support, like, and subscribe so you can watch more videos in the future. So thank you guys once again for watching, and I will see you guys next time.